Michael Reynolds never liked cameras, but you need to understand, this isn't about vanity or shyness. It's about what happened the moment someone took his picture without asking. The photo wasn't stolen from his phone, it wasn't pulled off social media. It was snapped across a quiet cafe table, a soundless shudder that seemed to press straight through his chest. You're not supposed to be here hearing this, and I shouldn't be saying it, but you deserve to know what came next because that picture wasn't just an image. It was the beginning of something no one has ever been able to explain, something his lawyer is still trying to bury before it's too late. Think of the last time you saw your own face, not in a mirror, but in a photograph you didn't take. The way it freezes you in time while the world keeps moving. Now imagine someone capturing that image without warning, like they were collecting proof of your existence, filing it away for reasons you'll never fully understand. That's what Michael felt when the flash went off that night. Not light, not exposure, but a tearing, as if a thread that kept him tied to the world had been pulled loose. He said nothing, but his hands trembled against the table as if he knew something had been taken from him, something he might never get back. And then it happened. The waitress brought the bill, the chairs scraped, the cafe door chimed, and Michael stood up except the man beside him swore he heard Michael whisper a single word before he vanished. No one else heard it. Not the waitress, not the couple in the booth across the aisle. Only one man, his colleague, pale-faced and trembling, claimed that Michael's voice rasped to name a name that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. A name tied to someone long gone, buried years ago, someone whose voice had once shaken the walls of a courtroom before disappearing forever. The picture exists, though no one will admit who took it. And the man who claimed to hear the whisper can't sleep without pills now. His testimony is sealed. His family won't speak, and every copy of that image has been erased from devices that should have been secure. The lawyer, her lawyer, has already threatened to silence the rest. You see, the name Michael whispered wasn't his own, and it wasn't hers either. It belonged to someone you've heard before, though you'll swear you haven't. And before this night is over, you all realize you've seen their face to be, cause it is already looking back at you. Michael Reynolds' name should have ended there. A whisper that dissolved into the air of a cheap cafe and never returned. But the thing about moments like that, the ones no one can explain, the ones people swear they'll never talk about, is that they never really die. They leave splinters in the mind, fragments that surface when you least expect them, catching under your skin when you're tired, when you're alone, when you've almost convinced yourself it was nothing. That's when it comes back. And if you've ever had a memory that didn't belong to you, a sound in your head that felt too familiar to ignore, then you already know what I mean. The picture is gone. That much they'll all agree on. Wiped. Corrupted devices that froze and rebooted without warning. One man swears he saw the photograph for less than a second before it vanished from his phone. But he describes it differently every time. He's asked. Sometimes Michael is sitting at the cafe table. Sometimes he's standing in the doorway. Sometimes his face is turned away like he knew what was coming. Which version is true? The answer changes depending on who you trust. And trust is the first thing that rots in stories like this. Here's where things fracture. You think you're watching someone else's tragedy from the outside, but the cracks start to run toward you. For weeks after that night, people close to Michael reported something strange, not dramatic, not cinematic, just wrong. Audio recordings from meetings where his voice cut out halfway through sentences, replaced with a low hum like old television static. A voicemail his mother swore he left, though the timestamp shows he was already missing by then. Hidden in the hiss of that tape is a single word, stretched and broken, a name you recognize but can't place. The more you replay it, the less certain you are that it's even human. But this is where the question splits you open. Was Michael taken, or did his mind break first? The evidence is slippery, and the people who hold it don't agree. Take Erin Collins's coworker, the only one who claims to have heard the whisper in the cafe. She's been telling her story on and off for months, each time with new details that don't line up. She swears she isn't lying, but paranoia clings to her like smoke. Sometimes she insists the name Michael spoke was from her own past, a person she buried long ago. Other times she admits she never heard it at all, that the sound was just her brain filling the silence with something it needed. But here's the part she doesn't share unless you press her there. A second recording, one nobody else has heard, and in the background of it, a child's voice speaks the name before Michael does. Now tell me, how do you explain a dead man's voice echoing through devices that shouldn't hold it? How do you justify a child saying something she's never been taught? The truth behind what no one tells you is this. Every person involved in Michael's disappearance remembers it differently. Some recall him as detached, quiet, folding into himself long before the camera flash. Others insist he was lucid, almost unnervingly present, as if he knew he was walking towards something irreversible. Even his lawyer, her lawyer, has shifted her story. At first she called it harassment, theft, exploitation of a private citizen, but lately her tone has softened, and there are moments, if you listen carefully to her interviews, where she seems almost afraid of winning the case, as though the closer she comes to proving what happened, the more she risks unraveling herself. And here's where you come in, because you've been listening long enough to feel it, the subtle tug, the unfinished thought. Maybe you heard it in your own room just now, a flicker of static in the walls, a buzz in your headphones that didn't belong to me. Maybe, for just a second, you thought someone else whispered your name. That's how it starts. Not with shadows, not with monsters, but with tiny fractures in the ordinary. The unsolved mystery everyone avoids is not what happened to Michael Reynolds, but what's happening to those who try to remember him. Erin stopped sleeping first. Then her hands began to shake. At one point, she admitted she couldn't recognize her own handwriting anymore, that her notes on the case seemed to be written by someone else. She brought one of those pages to a reporter, ink sprawling across the margins in jagged loop sand. When she read it aloud, the words didn't match the letters on the page. Think about that. Think about staring at evidence in your own hand that betrays you out loud. It's easy to call it trauma, dissociation, stress. The human mind folds in on itself when it's pushed too far. But what if those breaks aren't the cause, but the entry point? What if Michael's disappearance was less about someone taking him, and more about him stepping into the cracks we all ignore? The more you follow this trail, the more the line between reality and breakdown dissolves. Erin talks about gaps in her memory, hours that disappear when she swears she was awake. She plays recordings for friends that don't exist when she tries to replay them later. Once, in a half-sob, she confessed that when she looks at family photographs now, her face seems slightly wrong. Angles shifted, eyes too sharp, as though the version of herself she remembers was replaced, pixel by pixel, with someone almost identical. This is where the paranoia takes root. If memories contradict recordings, if faces shift in pictures, if voices echo where they shouldn't, how do you decide which truth to believe? Trauma makes liars of us all, but so does interference. And the worst part, you never know which one you're living. You want the truth behind what they don't want you to remember. It's this: the story isn't about Michael anymore. It's about what he left behind. The residue that clings to everyone who brushes too close. The people who try to silence it aren't protecting him. They're protecting you from realizing that reality itself isn't stable. That one stray picture might peel the floor out from under you. And Erin, she's either the last person telling the truth, or the first one to collapse under the weight of it. When she leans across the table, voice breaking, and swears that she has seen you in the background of that missing photograph, that your face is already in the file no one was supposed to open. You damn know whether to believe her or run. Because the real mystery isn't where Michael went. It's why his story is already reaching you. For weeks, the silence around Michael Reynolds' disappearance thickened into something almost breathable, as though the city itself was holding its breath. The news cycle had dulled, reporters moved on, and even Erin stopped answering calls. Then, without warning, the first crack of resolution appeared, so ordinary it seemed almost laughable. A discarded flash drive, found wedged behind a filing cabinet in Michael's office. No one claimed to have seen it before, no record of anyone searching that spot, yet there it was, dust-caked and waiting. The lawyers seized on it instantly, their voices sharp with relief. This, they said, was it? The missing piece, the proof. For the first time since the cafe, there was a sense that maybe the mystery could be solved. Tied up neatly, explained in words that wouldn't unravel in the middle of the night. When they played the files in the dim glow of a law office projector, what they saw was almost disappointingly mundane. Meeting notes, audio logs, grainy photographs of parking lots and hotel lobbies. But then the final folder opened, labeled only with the date of Michael's last day, and the room changed. The photograph was there, the one that was supposed to be erased. And in this version, Michael's face was sharp, centered, undeniable. His eyes weren't panicked, not fractured, not lost, they were calm, locked directly on the camera. A man about to step into something, but knowing. The lawyers exchanged glances that said case closed. Erin shook her head, whispered that it wasn't possible, but even she looked relieved. As if having an image she could cling to was enough to quiet the storm in her mind. For a moment, everyone allowed themselves the fragile mercy of believing the mystery was solved. But if you've lived through hidden truths, you know how quickly they collapse. It takes only a single detail to rot the foundation. On the edge of the photograph, barely visible in the dark corner of the frame, was another hand. Not Michael's, not belonging to anyone at that cafe. A child's hand, resting lightly on the table, palm up, as though waiting to be held. When magnified, the hand is smaller than it should be, delicate and pale, fingers curled in an impossible way, as though they'd been captured mid-motion. No one in that cafe remembered a child being there. No server mentioned it. No customer recalled it. Yet the hand was there, frozen, undeniable. And that's when the false resolution split open like wet paper. The moment that detail surfaced, Erin stopped breathing. Her body folded in on itself, her chair squealing across the floor. Because years earlier, long before Michael ever vanished, Erin had been present at another disappearance. A childhood birthday party. The kind people remember only in fragments. Streamers taped to a wall. A cake sliding off its plate. Children chasing each other in dizzy circles. And then Alinsa. A girl named Hannah. No older than 8. Gone in the space of a breath. No one saw her leave. No one heard the door. Only one thing remained. A Polaroid snapped, seconds before she vanished. In the corner of that photograph, behind the balloons and frosting, was a hand. Small, pale, curled exactly the same way. A mirror detail, folded across decades. The past and the present pressed against each other so tightly it was hard to breathe. Erin tried to convince herself she'd imagined it, that her mind was grafting one memory onto another, but her hands shook as she scrolled between the two images. Different rooms, different years, the same impossible hand. Memory glitch, they called it, trauma shaping what you think you see. But the deeper, hidden truth is that trauma doesn't replicate details so precisely. It doesn't carve identical fingerprints into photographs separated by time. Something else does. And maybe this is the part you've felt in your own life, the recognition you can't quite place. You've had moments, haven't you, where the past folded into the present so neatly it felt rehearsed. A smell, a sound, a hand on your shoulder that shouldn't have been there, and for a second, you swore it already happened. You brushed it off. Everyone does. But sitting there in that office, watching Erin crumble, it was clear. These weren't accidents. They were repetitions. And if something repeats, it means something is watching. It would have been easy comforting even to dismiss it all as a psychological fracture. That's what the lawyers wanted. That's what the press would print. You're not crazy, Erin whispered to herself as though testing the words. They lied to you. But even as she said it, her phone vibrated against the table. A text. No number, no name, just 4 words. Asterisk, you were there too. She dropped the phone like it had burned her. The room turned heavy then, sound pressing inward. The audio of the files began to warp, a faint hum swelling in the speakers, like someone breathing too close to the microphone. On replay, Michael's voice cut out again, but this time, when the static cleared, it wasn't silence that followed. It was laughter, not cruel, not mocking, but light, almost childish, echoing as though recorded in a room with no walls. The sound should have been impossible. It wasn't part of the file. And yet it played, looping faintly in the background, growing sharper with each repetition until someone yanked the power cord from the wall. The false resolution collapsed into something far worse. The recognition that they were never alone, that the story didn't begin at the cafe, or even with Michael, that something had been there from the start, folding its presence into photographs. Bending audio, tugging on memory until truth and lie braided into one suffocating thread. It wasn't the kind of force you could name, or even point to. It was atmospheric, living in the margins, feeding off the cracks people refused to see. And the disturbing part, it wasn't hunting Michael. It wasn't even hunting Erin. It was hunting whoever dared to look too closely. Which brings us to you. Because you've been following, haven't you? You've traced the whispers, leaned in at the wrong moments, let the hum of static curl into your ears. You thought you were safe because you were only listening. But ask yourself why. Is it that when you close your eyes right now, you can picture the hand in that photograph with perfect clarity, even though you've never seen it? Why does it feel like you've held it before? Maybe as a child, maybe in a memory you were told to forget. That's the hidden truth of this chapter. It isn't about Michael, or Erin, or Hannah. It's about recognition. About the sudden sinking realization that you are not outside this story at all, you are inside it. And the photographs, the whispers, the glitches, they've been waiting for you to catch up. And just before the office lights flickered out, before the silence folded over them like a shroud, Erin looked straight into the camera that was still recording and said something that changed everything. Her voice was steady, even calm, as though she'd been waiting years to speak it aloud. She didn't say Michael's name. She didn't say Hannah's. She said yours. You start to realize this isn't Michael's story anymore, and it isn't Erin's either. The deeper you sink into the fragments, the more you notice a pattern, a set of fingerprints smudged across years. People, places you've never touched, yet somehow remember. The photograph with the child's hand wasn't the only one. There are others, dozens, maybe hundreds. They're not public, but they circulate like contraband among people who already know what you're learning too late. Each one has something that doesn't belong, a shadow bending the wrong direction, a reflection missing from glass, a mark on the skin that looks the same on different people across decades. These are the things no one prints in the papers, the things investigators leave out of reports, the things you only ever see when someone slides an envelope across the table at midnight and whispers, "Don't show this to anyone else." And here's where the paranoia deepens. You're not the first to notice. Others have been here, walking the same path, leaving behind their own warnings. Some of them never made it to the end. You find traces of them in places you weren't supposed to look. Cryptic graffiti on the underside of stairwells, half-erased chalk marks on abandoned playgrounds, numbers scrawled on the inside of library books. Always subtle, always deniable. But if you pay attention long enough, you begin to see the symbols, repeat spirals broken at the edge, circles with missing centers, arrows that lead nowhere. Not art, not vandalism, messages, a hidden alphabet written for people like you. The first time you dream of Michael, you dismiss it as stress, A brain trying to stitch together scraps of a story you've been feeding it. But the second time is different, because Aaron is there too, and neither of them speak in words. Instead, they mouth shapes, and you know instantly what they're saying, because you've seen the symbols before, scrawled across train cars, scratched into metal bathroom stalls. You wake up with a taste of iron in your mouth, the sense that you've swallowed something you can't spit out. Shared dreams, you tell yourself, but the truth slips in any way. You're not dreaming alone. You begin to hear from them, the others. Not openly, never with full names, but through channels that shouldn't exist anymore. Email accounts with no history, mailboxes that vanish when you try to reply. One message stands out. You were right all along. The picture isn't proof, it's permission. You read it 100 times, wondering what permission means, wondering who gave it, wondering who else has received the same message. When you check again the next day, the message is gone, scrubbed from every record, as though your eyes were the only place it ever lived. You think you're piecing together a conspiracy, but conspiracies imply control. This is something else. This is a memory glitch, a fracture in the way time is supposed to move. That's why people swear they saw Michael weeks after he vanished, walking through train stations, slipping into subway cars. That's why a teacher in Michigan swears Hannah sat in her classroom last year. Same face, same age, unchanged since the birthday party. The photographs aren't just capturing their recycling, pulling people in, pressing them against the fabric of someone else's memory. The mystery uncovered isn't about a disappearance, it's about replication. What the government never released, what the courts buried. What the reporters stopped chasing was that Michael wasn't the first and one to be the last. There's found footage from 20 years ago, locked away, showing another man seated in another cafe, a flash catching his face just before he vanished. He looks eerily familiar, but not because you know him. Familiar like a reflection you see in a window at night, one that doesn't quite match your own movements. The footage skips at the crucial moment, frames missing, but in the static between, the hand appears again. Always the hand, always waiting. You begin to question identity itself, the slippery way it holds you until you lean too close. What if you aren't who you think you are? What if memories aren't proof of life, but placeholders carefully arranged to keep you from noticing the gaps? Every time you're sure of yourself, another crack forms. You forget where you left your keys. You forget who texted you last night. You look at your reflection too long and realize the eyes staring back don't quite belong to you. It's easier to dismiss these things as stress, fatigue, imagination. But what if they're the proof you've been trained to ignore? And then comes the third perspective, the observer. They don't claim to be Michael or Aaron or even connected to them. They appear in margins, in footnotes, in whispers from people you've never met but feel like you've known all your life. They speak with unsettling clarity, as if they've been watching you as much as you've been watching them. You think you're the audience. The message reads, handwritten on paper that smells of mildew, slipped under your door without sound. But you're the subject. It's signed with nothing but a spiral. The observer insists they're the only one telling the truth. That Michael was chosen not because of who he was, but because of who would remember him. That Hannah's disappearance wasn't an accident, but an opening. That Aaron's breakdown is less collapse than communication, her body speaking a language her mouth never could. And that you, reading this, following this, replaying it in your head, are already inside the same structure. You've been inside it longer than you know. The heavy dread isn't just in the story anymore. It's in the recognition that you're part of the conspiracy, even if you never asked to be. The symbols are for you. The dreams are for you. The photographs when you find them online. When you scroll past them without knowing why they feel wrong, they're for you too. Every detail pulls tighter around you, as if the larger force has been waiting for you to notice. Not to destroy you, not even to control you, but to remind you that control was never yours to begin with. Identity becomes a negotiation then. Whose memories are you holding? Whose voice slips into your head when you're too tired to push it out? If you were given proof that half your life was written by something else, would you fight it, or would you cling to the lie because it feels safer? These are the questions the observer leaves for you, heavy, unanswered, pressing down until you feel the edges of your own mind blur. And the ending isn't clean, because it isn't supposed to be. The lights flicker again, the static rises, and another photograph surfaces in your feed. It isn't Michael, it isn't Aaron, it isn't Hannah, it's someone else, seated in the same cafe. Head turned slightly toward the lens, mouth open as though about to speak your name. You don't remember posing for it. You don't remember being there. But the timestamp says otherwise. And in the corner, always in the corner, the hand is waiting. There is a moment in every mystery where the questions stop being about evidence, names, and timelines, and start circling around something far heavier, something that has nothing to do with photographs, or vanishing waitresses, or files erased from devices. That moment is here, and you can feel it, can't you? The pull of it, like a string drawn through the center of your chest, tightening with each word, each image, each whisper you thought you could dismiss. For Michael Reynolds, for Aaron Collins, even for the nameless child's hand that appears again and again, in places it should not be. The central question was never how they disappeared, but why. And the why is the part you're not ready for. The part none of us are ready for. Because it isn't about monsters, or conspiracies, or shadows slipping between frames of film. It's about what it means to be human in a world that has never really belonged to us. Erin confessed at first, her voice raw, paper-thin, like she'd been carrying the weight for years. She admitted she had lied not because she wanted to, but because telling the truth felt like opening a door she could never close again. She never just heard Michael whisper that night in the cafe. She heard him say her name. Not Erin, not the person she had been living as. Another name, one she had buried so deep she thought it belonged to a stranger. It was the name she had been given as a child, the one tied to Hannah's disappearance, the one no one in her adult life knew. The second she heard it, she realized the mystery wasn't just following her, it was her. And that's when the veil lifts, just slightly. Because what if every disappearance, every glitch in memory, every hand that shows up in places it doesn't belong, isn't a threat but an invitation? What if reality bends not to destroy us, but to remind us that our lives are layered, that there are selves within us we were never allowed to hold on to? The truth, then, is unbearable. These vanishings aren't accidents. They are awakenings. But awakenings hurt, because once you see the threads, you cannot unsee them. You begin to notice how many of your own memories feel secondhand, how often your reflection looks borrowed, how many times you've aired your name in a voice that didn't come from your own throat. You start asking yourself if your childhood photographs really belonged to you, or if they were given to you like props in a play you didn't audition for. This is where the story claws into something deeply personal. Because you realize the question isn't asterisk what happened to Michael. The question is asterisk what am I willing to lose in order to know who I am? For Erin, the choice came late at night, hunched over that corrupted flash drive, whispering that she couldn't live with the half-life anymore. She couldn't keep pretending the images didn't bleed into each other, that Hannah's face wasn't also her own, that Michael's last look into the lens wasn't a reflection meant for her. She wept until her voice broke, then said the words that no one else in the room could stomach. Asterisk, what if being found is worse than being lost? You need to sit with that. Because it's the same choice staring at you now. Do you want the truth, raw and splintering, knowing it might undo everything you've built your life upon? Or do you want the comfort of a lie, seamless and forgettable, where your face is yours and your memories are safe? The painful confession is this: the force watching, the presence shaping photographs and bending recordings, isn't external at all. It isn't something hiding in shadows. It's inside us, in the spaces where our past selves never died, where the parts of us that were erased still breathe, waiting to be recognized. The danger has never been about vanishing into thin air. The danger is remembering fully, because once you do, the life you've lived can never be the same again. And here is the cruelest part of all. You already know this. You've always known. That flicker of déjà vu, that taste of fear when a stranger calls you by the wrong name. That flash of grief when you look at a picture and swear you were there, though you couldn't have been. That isn't madness. That isn't coincidence. That is your other life pressing against the walls, begging you to let it in. The climax comes not in revelation, but in choice. Michael stepped into it. Erin crumbled under it. Hannah never returned from it. And you're right, noir, brushing against the same edge. To believe means letting yourself fracture into all the people you've ever been. Accepting the unbearable truth that identity isn't fixed but fluid, shared, borrowed, stolen. To refuse means living safe, whole, but forever haunted by the quiet certainty that your life isn't fully yours. And isn't that the most terrifying awakening of all? Not that you might vanish, but that you already have, that the person watching this, the one gripping the story so tightly, isn't the original you at all. The screen flickers, a final image surfaces. Not Michael, not Erin, not Hannah, it's you. Not the you that's watching this now, but another version, younger, standing just out of frame, lips parted as though about to confess something you've been running from your entire life. The timestamp is wrong, impossibly wrong, 20 years before you were even old enough to stand there. The choice is here. To look or to turn away. To believe, or to bury, to awaken, or to keep dreaming. And as the static hums like a pulse in the background, you finally understand. The truth doesn't set you free. It binds you to everything you've ever been, everything you'll ever be, all at once. The video slows, the image holds, and the last line hangs in the air like a prayer you're afraid to finish. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for stories you were never meant to hear. Until next time, remember, some truths don't want to be found.